using retail analytics to deliver insights to your organization, and specifically with a gaze towards what I would consider more advanced analytic workloads. Obviously, I have some background in, with Sable, with your organization, so I have a pretty good understanding of at least where you were a year and a half or more ago, and getting some insight from Gary as well in terms of where things are at now. So we can again kind of tailor the discussion a bit more to your specific use cases than maybe some of the bit more generic. So when we talk about retail, as I understand it, in fact, you guys are in a bit of a shift in terms of maybe what your business model looks like, and how that looks going forward, and getting out of maybe some of the more consumer facing retail aspects, and turning into more of a well, how would you characterize it? Is that fair to say, first of all?
Yeah, I think that we're shifting our focus more toward a wholesaler.
Yeah. So with that in mind, some of what we're going to talk about today may have had to do with a bit more of some of the customer facing aspects of it. So I'll also probably talk about a few of those kind of issues, but we can focus maybe a bit more on some of the types of use cases that will be more applicable to you and your business. So with that said, this introduction should go pretty quickly, because I think I know all of you guys. That's what I look like. That's what I look like there pre-lockdown, and there's a picture of what I look like today after 9 months in my locked in my home office. So agenda here today is again to focus on the analytics environment, and specifically with an eye towards workloads, use cases, challenges facing the retail, and we'll expand that to include what I would consider consumer goods industries. We'll take a look at kind of where things are at today, at least from our vantage point. Talk about some of the challenges that are facing organizations in the industry, and then some of the challenges and barriers to being able to implement some of these solutions and technologies that we're talking about, as well as what those opportunities are that these kind of workloads and use cases present. And then spend a fair amount of time talking about just a variety of use cases, solutions, possible ways to take some of the technologies that we're talking about and apply them within your business, within your industry, to solve some what we see as some common problems. So my goal here really is we're not going to get real deep technical here today, although I'm certainly happy to answer some technical questions, and perhaps maybe when we get back together later today, that certainly will be more of a technical discussion. But my goal is really to leave you guys with one or two or three ideas for ways that you can use some of the technology, some of the advances in the space, and apply it to your business in a way that could deliver true and really transformational type change. So that's the goal here today. I don't know that we'll see how we do on time, but I would be surprised if we use the whole hour. So we'll kind of go through what I have. And again, since it's a small group here today, feel free to kind of butt in and ask questions. You don't need to reserve those to the chat, for example, today, since we've only got a handful here. So just unmute and stop me whenever I'm not being clear about something, or you have additional questions. So as we think about the industry at large, kind of what's driving the need for what I'm calling advanced analytics capabilities in retail, and this goes beyond what I would think of as maybe traditional analytics, being more traditional reporting, and we'll go into kind of what that maturity model looks like here in a moment. But So what's what are some of the industry factors at play here that are really requiring organizations to get better at this and to apply these technologies in ways that are going to help their organization? And I've got a kind of a 4 or 5 here that I wanted to touch on, starting with just the increasing expectations for our end customers. Now, again, this could be the ultimate consumer, or potentially even in your case, if you're shifting that model to be more of a wholesaler, you could consider the customer here just your business partners in a lot of ways. But as technology advances, as some of these capabilities continue onward, the customers have higher expectations of us as a retail organization, whether that's personalizing the services that we provide, or just doing a better job tailoring to the individual. That's one of the real kind of motivating factors here. The other one that we see having a real effect is, and this is maybe more of an ongoing trend, but I feel like has accelerated, which is the notion that organizations, that consumer goods companies are producing more and more products, right? The ability to deliver multi-channel sales experience and with the availability to more easily sell products at a variety of outlets, whether brick and mortar or online, has encouraged organizations to develop further and further kind of niche products, whether that's just different SKUs for different sizes of products they already sell, or different varieties of a more maybe more popular, more traditional formula. There are a lot more products out there, and so it's a lot more to deal with. And how do we take the data that we have available, whether it's the historical sales data or potentially market data, and use that to do a better job managing both the variety and the volume of products that are out there, and getting the right mix. As I mentioned, kind of the further acceleration of online channels. Obviously, this is as well been kind of an ongoing trend for years, but now as we find more places to sell products, and even more spending now is shifting online with the current environment, that's a trend that's continued. Supply chain complexities, and these again we're getting more complex even before the pandemic, and the pandemic, of course, has provided some additional challenges on the supply chain side. So how we manage those, how we can better get insights into that part of the business, and do a better job optimizing that aspect. And then, of course, the never-ending shrinking margins across the industry, and certainly you guys in the grocery industry, I'm sure feel that on a kind of continual basis. But that's always there, and so there's always the need to increase and improve efficiency so that we can make more money.
Hey, Gary.
Yeah.
Hey, just a quick question on the increasing customer expectations. One of the other things that I'm seeing is that obviously there's tremendous need to better understand customers, and I think obviously Amazon driving the more personalized customer experience and knowing more about customers seems to be a huge, quite frankly, game changer in retail across the board. Are you seeing that as well? Is that something that is included in that increasing customer expectations, or what do you think?
I think you're right, and I did intend to kind of include under that umbrella. We'll talk a little bit more as we go on about some of the approaches there. Again, I'm not sure from Save-A-Lot's perspective how relevant those kind of consumer-facing aspects of maybe this conversation are going to be if you're moving into more of a wholesale model. But Doug, you're absolutely right in terms of in terms of where the industry is going, and expectations on the consumer end for a more personalized experience. For example, I get really frustrated now when I can't look up whether a product's in stock at a store before I go out, especially since I don't go out very much. it's really frustrating to get all the way to a store and find out they don't have it in stock. It's kind of become an expectation, at least on my part, that, and I go to Home Depot just about every weekend now, that I can look up on Home Depot's website and make sure that they have what I'm looking for in stock, and that it's there when I arrive. So those are the kind of expections that,
And really personalizing that experience. So I mean, even now everyone expects to see a rating of a product. They expect to see more information about products. They expect to be able to the multi-channel creates a special challenges with data, because obviously having data silos is not helpful in a multi-channel model. So anyhow, I just see that as a big need in the market, or a trend in the marketplace that I wanted to call out.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Doug. So as we're talking now, we've kind of set the table in terms of what we believe is kind of driving the needs here. Let's talk about kind of where we see the industry, and you guys maybe can chime in on where you see yourselves as well. But this is a pretty standard excuse me, maturity model. Maybe not specific to retail, but more to data analytics in general. And you kind of see the steps as we move up move across the maturity of analytics capability across the kind of the x-axis there, and then the bottom from just the having the data itself to maybe where a lot of firms were 5, 10, 15 years ago, which I'd consider more standard reports, right? Maybe that's your monthly sales report. And it could be that various parts of your organization still operate in a model that kind of sticks to the more standard reports. But obviously, industry-wide, we've seen a lot of, let's say, maybe the majority of mid to larger organizations obviously move further down this capability scale into the more of the self-service and ad hoc reporting, and obviously save a lot doing lots of Power BI would be one example of that. However, maybe the danger of laying it out this way is that it lends credence to the notion that these are all kind of iterative, and one step leads is a kind of a natural progression to the other, and that's why I've got kind of the dotted line and the indicating kind of this big chasm between the self-service BI, maybe a lot of what is delivered during using tools like Power BI, and then being able to cross that gap, or make that next big leap into what we would consider at this point to be more the advanced analytics workloads. That would be your machine learning, your predictive and prescriptive analytics. And there's, as kind of noted there on the diagram, it talks about the predictive being able to tell what will happen, and that could be everything from forecasting, kind of your more traditional sales forecasting, to maybe customer demand and other types of predictive capabilities there. And then you move into the prescriptive, which starts to make recommendations for what to do based on the output of those predictive models, and potentially integrating those into line of business systems so that you can operate more efficiently. Then you get all the way to the autonomous system, and that's where the machines become self-aware and turn on their creators, right? But that's when it becomes kind of fully embedded rather within your organization. And so we've got the kind of chasm in the middle, and most of the organizations that we work with in kind of that mid-market space are on the left-hand side of that chasm. Now we've worked with a lot of organizations that are starting to kind of try to dip their toes in that water on the predictive analytics and predictive and prescriptive side. And so a lot of what we're going to focus on today is what's possible once you make that leap, once you stare out across that chasm and make that jump onto the more advanced analytics. And so I apologize. I'm going to use the terms AI, machine learning, and advanced analytics pretty interchangeably during the course of this discussion. And so I hope that doesn't. You could pick nits, and there might be some small differences between those definitions, but I'm gonna again use them fairly interchangeably here. So that kind of lays out maybe where I think we are today, and so let's kind of moving forward here. Set the table in terms of just what is, again, artificial intelligence, and again, artificial intelligence, machine learning. This is probably not new to anyone on the call today. Hopefully you guys are at least somewhat familiar. In fact, it's kind of hard to not be exposed to AI as in the news and as it's been over the last few years. But it's, to kind of boil it down here real quickly, it's just the machine's ability to recognize patterns. That's really the one that we're going to focus mostly on today. You can expand that. We'll maybe talk about a few use cases for sound and images and words and natural language processing, those kind of use cases. But for our purposes, for purposes of this discussion today, it's going to focus mostly on analyzing data, sets of data, and being able to ferret out patterns within that data that may not be immediately evident to even a seasoned analyst, for example. And its ability to kind of learn over time is important as well. And as you train these models, we can talk a little bit about kind of what that looks like and what goes into that. But it has kind of that learning function is an important capability here as well. But more broadly, it's just this set of technologies that allows computers and algorithms to kind of understand and interact with the world more naturally. As I said, this isn't a new technology, or AI or machine learning has been around, for a long time. What's really changed and why you hear so much about it within the last few years, particularly, is how much easier it really is to do than it has ever been before, and how much more available these kind of approaches are to kind of to the mainstream. And the few things that have led to that is just the massive computing power that we now have available by being able to easily scale these things up in cloud-based systems. We've continued to accumulate and produce massive sets of data, as we'll talk about here in a moment. Those are important to be able to properly train models. And there have been some breakthroughs in algorithms and methods. Although more than anything, it's really been the what I'm calling kind of the democratization of some of these algorithms based on some of the tools that are now available. And we'll talk when we kind of wrap up here about some of the tools that are available in Azure to do that. But if you think about, again, some of these techniques, they were possible 10 years ago, and there were a couple of highly specialized tool sets that could deliver on those kind of workloads. But you needed a master's degree in statistics to be able to kind of understand what went into them, and the learning curve to be able to use those tools was very steep, and that's changed considerably within the last 5 years, particularly. So that's kind of why you see and why you hear so much about these potential use cases, is because because all these factors make it that much easier to do now. So that said, maybe one of the big differences between projects involving more of these advanced analytic capabilities is and let's say reporting kind of workload are it's much less of a straight line. It's much harder to say just based on the nature of the types of questions we're asking it and the methods that we're using to try to answer those questions. You don't always get out of a AI algorithm what you expect, and that's kind of by design. If we were just getting what we were expecting, we we're just going to kind of authenticate prior assumptions. And in fact, in many cases, the most powerful algorithms are ones that find similarities, find occurrences that we didn't expect, and can use that to drive better predictions. So every organization is going to be a little different, and every problem within those organizations is going to be a little different as well. So we'll talk a little later about just making sure we kind of take that into account as we're looking at these kind of projects. But and I'll also probably talk a bit more later as well about the notion of this cultural transformation. But I don't want to undersell that by any means, because as we think back to that, the maturity model that I had up earlier, those first 4 or 5 points there all had to do with what I would still consider fairly traditional report, maybe development and delivery, in that the output from each of those different maturity levels has traditionally been a set of data, a report that users can kind of open up and consume. And then, from there, they draw their own conclusions and use that to inform some of the decision making they make. Once you cross that chasm that I talked about into the predictive and prescriptive worlds, it really requires you a level of comfort and trust in the algorithms and the decisions that are being made within them, because you're really turning over some of that decision making to, in some ways, kind of a black box algorithm that lives out in the cloud, and starting to use this to help guide some of the decision making within your organization. So it is a bit of I shouldn't even say a bit of, it is a significant cultural shift that you can meet, that can be met with resistance in a lot of organizations. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. And it's going to require kind of that combination of top down and bottom up change, right? It's got to be driven from the tops of the organization, with support at that level, as well as training the people on the lower ends of the organization that are going to use this and put it into practice. Does all that make sense? And I should note that since when we started talking here today, it was just our Save A Lot team. It sounds like Mike has joined us from Edgewell, so welcome, Mike. I just want to point that out, because I kind of encouraged Save A Lot to share freely here a moment ago. So I just wanted to let you know that our audience has expanded here slightly.
Yeah, actually, somebody that used to work at Save A Lot, a couple of guys, Troy Kreitz and also Brad Coons, they both, I think, recently left Save A Lot, but they worked for me at Express Scripts. So.
Oh, okay.
That's a small world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there was a guy named Brian Griffith that was over with you guys for a while, I think.
Yep.
We were peers at Panera, so it kind of feels like I already know you guys.
Yeah.
Well, Mike might know everything about Save A Lot, then we don't maybe.
Well, I'm a customer, so that's a good thing too.
Okay, then jumping forward, then let's look at some of the common challenges. This is based on some survey data, some industry survey data, and this isn't retail specific, but more of a larger kind of list of challenges that affect organizations from kind of making that leap and going from getting into the more advanced analytics and AI. And so this is kind of a laundry list. We don't need to go through all of them. Hopefully, a lot of these you're kind of nodding your head when you see these. Percentage-wise, looks like the top one on here is data quality. The 64% of the people that don't agree with that are probably lying to you, because everybody has data quality issues at some level, right? But that is an important point, and something obviously that needs to be addressed before any of these things can. That's kind of a foundational issue. Is as we say, garbage in, garbage out, right? We've got to get good data going in. But some of these others, I would challenge. Obviously, the cost is prohibitive, and if you're thinking of it more in lines with the cost and not in line in terms of the ROI or the benefit, my guess would be that you that haven't done a robust enough kind of ROI analysis to really build your business case, because that's what's frankly really appealing and powerful about most of these kind of solutions that we're going to get into here in a bit, is that these are typically direct ROI kind of bottom line projects, which has always been a bit of a challenge in the analytics space to prove the bottom line value of a new sales dashboard, right? It's hard to say that that's going to lead to X% improvement in sales performance. You can make some soft claims about increased visibility is obviously better, et cetera, et cetera. But the kind of workloads that these artificial intelligence solutions can provide are things that are going to directly reduce cost. And for example, in the case of some of that, say supply chain optimization would be one, or increase sales by doing a better job affecting customer retention. And those are things that are pretty easy to calculate, right? I mean, what you can pretty easily ask your organization, what would if we could increase customer retention by 5% or reduce customer turnover by 5% year over year, what is that going to mean to our sales? And you can get some hard numbers to go back and lean on as you're trying to sell these kind of projects internally. So a couple others. The good news is, as you scroll over to the bottom right, a lot of those kind of problems, data existing in silo and insufficient usable data. And again, this survey is probably even a couple years old by this point, and maybe even further out of date. But those are the problems that we've spent the last 10 or 15 years solving, right? Building data warehouse platforms, and now maybe even pushing them out into the cloud so they're a little bit more scalable, and doing some of the data integration work so that we don't have those silos that exist anymore. Again, going back to that maturity model, in order to be able to deliver even that ad hoc or that self-service model, a lot of those problems have already been solved. And again, that's foundational work in order to be able to do the advanced analytics. But it's at least encouraging to see, and at least in my experience with some of your organizations, you've solved a lot of those type of issues. Anything else on this list that really stands out to anyone, or any other challenges that you are running into within your own organizations? And the other one that I would bring up, and I think I'm going to have a bullet to talk about later, would be these kind of projects really do require a strong partnership between IT and your business users, because these are in order to get that kind of integration and adoption that we talked about, they really do need a strong champion. Again, if it's supply chain optimization you're talking about, to have somebody that end, or the C-level executive responsible for that would be great, to be a champion for these kind of solutions.
Yeah, I know whenever I was at Panera, we were actually using machine learning, and some of it was around, the offers that you get from Panera for, the Coffee of the Month Club, or this particular item that it's recommending. And, one of the challenges we would run into is just, you've got it here, but the data quality that then caused accuracy issues were, like for instance, it recommended that, a free coffee to me, and yet there was no historical data that shows I've ever ordered coffee from Panera, because I don't drink coffee. And so it just took refinement and, a lot of regression and iterations of this to get it to where the accuracy continues to increase. And that's where we were actually looking somewhat at some deep learning too, to be able to take a look at different neural networks and AI engines to then use deep learning to kind of figure out what the best information was across multiple ones to give us the most accuracy. But it definitely helped, right? Because our goal was to propose things that, there's some historical data or some type of knowledge around why you might be interested in that product, as opposed to just randomly throwing stuff out at you.
Yeah, those are great points, Mike. It just speaks to the amount of data that you really need to be able to kind of properly train one of these types of models to really spit out high quality results, high quality recommendations in your case.
Gary, I think it also speaks to the fact, though, that because data quality, everyone's heard of analysis paralysis, but there's also data quality paralysis, right? Because it's easy. There's no such thing as perfect data, right? And so my experience is that there's a law of diminishing returns on data quality, to where if you can spend lots and lots of time and cycles to try to get your data perfectly clean, but it seems like it can never get perfectly clean. So you kind of have to figure out where is it clean enough, right, to do the job. And I think that's a challenge that I've seen a lot of clients struggle with is where is clean enough?
Yeah, in fact, let me kind of turn this discussion on itself, and that there are a lot of organizations now that are using AI to increase data quality, right? They're pointing algorithms at their data itself to clean it up so that they can remove some of the human interaction that usually has to, kind of some of the manual steps that are needed to clean up bad data, and pointing algorithms at it to clean it up automatically. So the one other thing here, one other point that I want to expand on just a bit was just the lack of experience or expertise in the technology. And again, this is another slide here that's becoming a bit dated now, but the important thing to note here is that this is trending upward. And I imagine if we updated this now that it's 2 or 3 years old, you would see this significantly higher across just about every industry as these tools have become, as I mentioned earlier, kind of more democratized. But I do want to kind of debunk the notion that you need like a senior level data scientist, or again somebody with a deep educational background in algorithms, et cetera, to be able to accomplish these kind of workloads. The tools that are available today is certainly some of the tools available in Azure to build these kind of models have really made this a lot easier to accomplish. But don't underestimate some of the skills that will be necessary to build and maintain these, and some of the training opportunities that may become necessary as you move forward as well. And then a few other challenges here that I want to touch on before we get into some of the potential use cases. There's in most organizations, there's a lot more that can be done with the data that is already there. So as you think again back to the maturity model and maybe some of the ad hoc reporting that you're making available to your users today, there's a fair amount of machine learning or artificial intelligence that we can let's say generate based on data that we already have. But as we think about this as well, I don't want you to be limited to just data that you may already have. I mean, a lot of the most transformational kind of use cases come when organizations recognize that what would happen if I also had access to this data stream, or maybe it's a third-party data set that we can purchase and link in and mash up with data that we already have available, or new streams of data that we can generate and capture on our own. And the example here is if you're a retail store, you may be able to install devices that are going to capture traffic flow throughout your store and figure out where people are going and what they're looking at and maybe what they're pausing to look at on a shelf, et cetera. There are a number of systems now with the various camera technologies that can capture more and more of that kind of stuff, and then turn that into data streams that we can consume from an artificial intelligence standpoint as well. We were just kind of having a discussion about the data accuracy and the trust. Obviously, the cleanliness of the data that goes in is important, but just as important is the trust of that data that comes out, and that's really where you get into the this notion of adoption and kind of developing that data culture. So I touched on this earlier, but again, first of all, I can't undersell or oversell enough, rather, the importance that this is going to take. We can develop a killer algorithm that's going to perfectly predict sales, for example, for the next 2 or 3 years, and if the organization doesn't really buy in and use it and integrate it into the day-to-day activities organizations, it's going to end up disappointing and not really kind of reaching its full potential. And as I said, this is a real culture shift, because we're going from just kind of viewing reports and making some decisions on your own to kind of taking our thumb off the scale there a little bit and leaving some of these decisions up to an algorithm. And so if everyone's not convinced that it's making good decisions, and there's going to have to probably be a proving out period, right? A pilot program, you're going to have to demonstrate some value. But everybody needs to get on board. And that said, it's one of the other challenges here is that it's not while the ROI can be significant depending on some of these types of workloads, it's not always a 3-month payoff period, right? I mean, sometimes these things take a little while to both develop because it's as I said earlier, it's a bit of a winding road. And then to really kind of find their groove and then get fully integrated into the day-to-day organization. And then the last point here is just on the challenges just around the velocity and the volume of data. Certainly as we gather more information, you're integrating with point of sale systems and vendor systems, and there's just data coming from everywhere, and that doesn't seem to be slowing down. And just kind of figuring out how to handle all that, ingest all that, and get that into a platform where we can use it for these analytic workloads and maybe for training models. So that being kind of the foundation for all this, what I really want to spend the next 10 minutes or so, and realizing we're already going through time here faster than I thought, but just kind of walking through a number of examples for the different types of solutions, different types of workloads or advanced analytic capabilities that might be useful in the retail and consumer goods space. And just kind of walk through this list and give a few examples. And again, if you guys have questions about any of these, please let me know. But the idea again being that hopefully you hear 1 or 2 of these that strike some interest and think, yeah, that could really help our organization, and maybe then the next step is to think a little bit about what the next steps there might be. So, and again, this is starting to scratch the surface. I've got a couple slides here, but just kind of going through the list. Customer retention, I think I mentioned this one earlier, right? We can use advanced machine learning algorithms to figure out when a customer may be at risk. We've noticed that they've been spending an X amount of dollars on a regular basis, and now they're starting to trail off, or some other event that may trigger concern, and maybe there's been an uptick in customer service calls because they're not satisfied with something, et cetera, et cetera. Point being that you can build models and consume that data from throughout your organization into a cohesive score, perhaps that would allow you to identify when those customers could be at risk, and you could kind of roll that into improving customer service. The other thing that people are doing a lot of, you've probably seen these on a lot of websites recently, are the chat bots that pop up and use some machine learning and some natural language text processing to allow you to kind of chat with a virtual agent, answer questions, and kind of a more natural interaction than trying to type in search query terms within a search box on a website, for example. This the next one, the category mix optimization, I think is very interesting and may be applicable to your organizations. And so it's about using developing an algorithm that's going to help us find the right mix of products. So one of the items that I mentioned is one of the kind of the challenges facing the industry up front was kind of the increasing number of products that are available, right? I mean, just in fact, one of the recent case studies was with a soda bottler, a Coca-Cola bottler, and all the different SKUs that Coca-Cola makes available to their resellers. There's kind of been this prevailing thought within the consumer goods industry for years that more choice for the consumer is good, and so you'll have SKUs for bigger bottles and smaller bottles, and now there's vanilla Coke and sugar-free Coke and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But this all becomes overwhelming, and at some point, there may be a point of diminishing returns, right? How many products can we have? There's only so much shelf space. We can only advertise effectively so many of these things, and so we can build models that will allow us to do a better job optimizing that mix. Let's say if we're trying to stock shelves in a grocery store or a convenient mart, what's the right mix of Coca-Cola Classic to Cherry Coke to Sprite, et cetera, et cetera, and what sizes, right? Do we need more 2-liter bottles, or do we need the little tiny 8-ounce cans that they make now? But being able to do that and build an algorithm that's going to compare maybe sales from a convenience store in one area that we feel like is very similar. So there's a notion of to kind of compare similar kind of peer groups, and we're seeing that this store is selling a lot of this product that the other store doesn't even carry yet. So can we optimize that mix? And that can have some real, obviously, bottom line impact to increase sales. And obviously, you can apply that to the grocery business very clearly in terms of how you help make your retailers better informed, make those kind of decisions as well.
Yeah, I mean, in our space, right? So like Hawaiian Tropic and Banana Boat are two of our key, kind of products, and so we're looking at how can we start to look at other, data inputs besides just, typical sales patterns, like, what the effects of weather conditions are depending on the location. Because if it's gonna be rainy and cold, then guess what? You don't sell a whole lot of sunscreen. And that's been kind of one of our big challenges, just to be honest, that we announced for our third quarter, sales were down pretty substantially because of COVID. And for us, one of the challenges is we've got, Banana Boat, Hawaiian Tropic, and Chick. Well, people aren't going on vacation. They're not using sunscreen. And if they're working from home, they don't tend to shave as often. And so trying to figure out and predict, because from a supply chain perspective, then we've got Wet Ones as one of our products, and Wet Ones is off the charts because they're 99.9% antibacterial wipes. And so, we've really used some analytics, but we definitely could benefit from some advanced capabilities because it's been a little more reactive rather than predictive in the way we're approaching it.
Yeah, well, just as another use case, Walmart uses public health data and this was even before the current situation, but they've for a couple of years now been using public health information to track the spread and progression of the flu, the more traditional flu, in different regions, so that they can more intelligently stock shelves for cold and flu medication. They can see that, for example, that it's really starting to spike in the St. Louis area, and so they'll send additional stock of those kind of products to their stores. But that's a good example of a way to use not only the information that you have about your own organization, right, the inventory levels, et cetera, but pulling in some information from outside sources, and kind of merging that up and developing a solution that's going to help you be better prepared to handle expected surges in demand. We can also use algorithms to inform our decision making during the R&D process, and figuring out not only what types of products are currently selling, but we can integrate some of the what we know about demand forecast. We can integrate or we can fold in data from the market at large, and maybe even competitor data to see what products are really starting to spike. If there's a niche product somewhere that is really seeing some significant growth, maybe it's time to kind of jump on that train. And you could really go nuts with this thing and allow it to. You could build algorithms that would start even kind of predict what kind of products that may sell or may generate demand based on just a variety of product attributes from products that you currently have, and see if you can come up with some new ideas there. So a lot of applications there in that R&D space. We kind of touched on the store and shelf allocation, but I would kind of fold into that some of the example I used earlier with that traffic pattern data. If you can start to gather information about how consumers move within your retail space. For years, grocery stores figured out that they put the milk and the eggs in the far back corner so that everybody has to navigate their way through the rest of the store and down the cookie aisle before they can get all that stuff. But obviously, with the technology available now, there's a variety of methods that can track individual shoppers, either via their cell phones or just optical kind of tracking. You can kind of see how people move throughout. Even one example, there was a store, I forget what it was, that was using some of this kind of tracking to kind of figure out when consumers kind of started to linger in front of a certain section. And they would alert store staff in the store that someone may need help because they've been standing there staring at the same product for 5 minutes, and chances are they may have a question. So those are the kind of things that you can some of the kind of applications for this you can kind of start to use. Customer loyalty. Not just obviously ways to increase loyalty, but really using an AI approach to figuring out what really drives customer loyalty. You may think that you have that your customers come to you because you have the lowest price, but as you dig into the data, it may be because they really like your website. Or that the product recommendations drive a lot. So just kind of understanding, and not just being able to improve loyalty, but really understanding what drives it and what motivates it. Maybe eye-opening in some cases. And then maybe a really much more traditional application here is just sales forecasting, right? Organizations have been doing sales forecasting for probably hundreds of years, but that's obviously become more automated, and the ability to kind of turn some of these models loose on forecasting typically is going to produce more accurate forecasts as well. So a few more here. We talked a couple times already about inventory and supply chain management, making sure that we get the right product to the right place at the right time. And this could include intelligent stock reordering, right? So it's recognizes that maybe not only that you've hit some kind of a threshold in terms of your stock level, but you could marry that up with some of the demand forecast, and maybe using that example for Walgreens again to predict flu sales based on some of that public health data that may be available, combined with inventory levels can help us better manage that supply chain. problem. Another one, and I thought about this when we were talking about data quality earlier, is the notion of being able to use algorithms to more intelligently categorize our products. In most organizations, you have a big product dimension that sits somewhere, and it's probably got 1,000 different attributes in terms of all the things we know about it, right? The size and the weight and the color and the you name it. And that's all traditionally been very manually curated by someone somewhere, or we're purchasing that information potentially even from third parties. But we could also turn an algorithm loose on those products, and maybe without knowing much more than maybe a picture of the product and a description that maybe we could pull from a website. We could begin to intelligently categorize it automatically as the data comes in, and at least take a first stab at that. That a human may need to kind of validate at some point, but if we could get 80 to 90% of that work done on an automated basis based on some image recognition and some natural language text processing, then we've saved ourselves a lot of work and potentially allowed ourselves to deal with that kind of problem much more easily. And that you could expand that to some of those items I was talking about earlier in terms of just general data quality issues you can apply algorithms to. I threw real-time analytics on here as well. This is less of an AI workload, but I would still probably consider it on the more advanced end of the spectrum, only because it's something that a lot of organizations can't quite produce today. And there are obviously various levels of real-time analytics, but
yeah, I mean, this is Mike. One of the things that we're doing is trying to couple IoT, so kind of our factory of the future idea, with where we use SAP as S4 HANA environment, and trying to do more with real-time or near real-time analytics from a manufacturing perspective. Getting the IoT sensors and all that data coming in is great, but it's like, okay, I asked the question specifically, can we react to that quick enough to actually take advantage of it? And that's part of this whole new kind of factory of the future mindset is, we'll have the data coming in, but we'll also need to do more of the real-time analytics to be able to speed up the line or slow down the line or do this or do that. So it's kind of a combination of technologies coming together to make use of this capability we already had with the HANA environment.
Yeah. Well, I'm realizing that I'm running real short on time here, so I'm going to just hit on one more of these, which is the notion of dynamic pricing, which is if we think about, and I brought this one up because Save-A-Lot's here, is the notion of being able to look at things like expiration dates on perishable items, and be able to generate dynamic prices, so we know that the ground beef is going to go bad. We're going to have to throw it out within the next day, so we mark the price down, and being able to do that in an automated and algorithmic way could really help drive bottom line. So I guess it's only a few minutes. I'm going to kind of skip over a few of these others. I want to hit on a couple of the things. So we've talked about some of the workloads. I just want to touch real briefly on maybe the how part of this, and highlight a few of the things on the Azure Synapse analytics side. If you're not familiar with this, it's kind of the rebranded version of Azure Data Warehouse that they've really expanded on that quite a bit, and now it's grown to become this unified kind of umbrella product that incorporates a lot of the various other Azure technologies that exist to help solve these kind of problems. So not just the data warehouse itself, but a lot of the big data technologies, as well as the Power BI and stuff of that as well. So allows you to take your data and drop it into a data lake, for example, without really putting a lot of structure to it, and query it using SQL, et cetera. There's obviously a lot of integration with Power BI, as I mentioned, as well as Azure machine learning, which allows us to do a lot of the kind of things that we've been talking about today, and then to create data pipelines to really push that data into that platform and load it at scale. And just as an example, and I wanted to highlight this in case you guys are interested, Microsoft has just released what they're calling their Synapse Retail AI Accelerator. Sorry, I don't have the link on here, but if you search for that, you should find it pretty quickly. And it's a kind of a reference architecture slash demo that you can set up pretty easily in Azure that incorporate, as you see here, kind of a number of pieces in Azure to develop a solution that ultimately you can integrate with your website or with Power BI or really any other application you can think of based on kind of the API interface that gets generated here. But in this case, the example anyway is used to create some recommendations and user and item-based recommendations as you might traditionally see on kind of like an Amazon kind of website. So just plowing through these last few slides since I know we're almost out of time. I would encourage you again to think about the transformation that's going to be necessary in order to really kind of, again, clear that, make that leap and clear that chasm to get into the more advanced analytics workspaces. We talked briefly about it, but it's really important that we're collecting the information, and the more the better, right? The better, the more information you can throw at these algorithms, the better the results are going to be. The more good, clean information, I should say. So we talked already about some of the cultural challenges and making sure that people are kind of empowered to make the decisions. So begin to think about, kind of what areas within your organization are you really struggling for better efficiency and better decision making, and begin to think about how you might begin to pilot a project that would help solve some of those problems using algorithms and advanced AI. And so if I had to kind of briefly sum up how to get started, right? Take what we've heard today, or maybe additional use cases that as you may come across them, and identify some good candidates for pilot projects. It's really important, again, to get that strong executive project sponsorship, because you're not going to go anywhere without that. We talked also about kind of building that business case, and then really the key here is to have patience, because it's as you get into kind of some of those algorithms, you're going to find that your first pass may not be quite where you want, and you may want to try to gather additional data sets and try different things. And there's a fair amount of back and forth, and sometimes what you come out with on the other end is not necessarily what you expected going in. But the opportunity here is so great that I think it should certainly be possible to find that right mix. And then last but not least, in terms of how we might be able to help Covenant, we're happy to do what we call kind of more envisioning or roadmap sessions to kind of lay out how to get from where you are today to where you want to go, as well as more detailed kind of architectural review and guidance as you're beginning to develop and design these kind of solutions. And then, of course, with the pilot projects themselves, if you get to that point. So I'm sorry I kind of rushed through this last few, and then we kind of ran out of time here. So I didn't really leave much time for questions, but I'm happy to stick around if you guys have any. Thank you again for your time today. Is there anything? Again, I hopefully that was helpful. And again, the goal on my end was